Today we have a special guest, one of my personal favorites. He's the CEO of Jiffy Mix, which we call the Chelsea Milling Company in our area. The reason why I picked him, though, is he's a legendary race car driver. He wasn't a NASCAR driver, he wasn't a drag racer, but he was a champion racer in the world of open wheel. He even raced at the Indianapolis 500 6 times, and in 1979 he was Rookie of the Year. He's a pretty distinctive character. He's very humble. But what I like about Mr. Holmes is not only has he been over 200 miles an hour in a race car, he's been over 180 miles an hour upside down in a race car, flipping 6 times. So we're super excited about Mr. Holmes being here today, and let's see how it goes. All right, welcome back to another episode of Automotive Legends. I'm Gary. As always, Dave's behind the mic. Today we got a special guest, Mr. Howdy Holmes. Hey, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I enjoy talking about motor racing, and it was a great career and a boyhood dream, and so let's go.
So how did you get your start in automotive racing? What was your first race, or what led you to that?
Well, it's kind of a long story. I don't know how much time we have, but I should say that my interest stemmed from the fact that my family, and I'm the eldest of 5 kids, each year we would go to the Indy 500 as a family, and the other thing we did together was Christmas. So I think I was 9, 1957, the first year we went, and, Indianapolis 500, there's 400,000 people there. It's Memorial Day. It's a lot of military presence. It's rah-rah, American flag, and so on. So it was pretty overwhelming. And I was, sitting in the stands, a spectator, and I think what attracted me, Gary, really was the precision, the art of driving. As I've told you, I'm not a mechanical guy and not a car guy, so I really don't qualify to be on your show, quite frankly. But and so later on in life, when Michigan International was built in mid '60s, they had were advertising a private driver's school, and it was pretty slick, 6-color brochure. It was called the Michigan International School of High Performance Driving. Yikes. And it was going to be taught by Sterling Moss.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, Sterling Moss, for those that don't know, is a famous Formula One driver from England. And I guarantee you, Sterling Moss has probably never heard of the state of Michigan, nor could he identify it on a world map. So he wasn't the instructor. It was a guy by the name of Kenny Law. And I signed up and went. It was the summer of '68. And all these boyhood dreams, fantasies, boyhood dream, all of a sudden just bubbled up inside. And I was in college at the time at Eastern. I wanted to teach business, and it was my senior year, and I dropped out of college and decided I was going to pursue a racing career, and I had no idea how I was going to do that. Or what, if you think about motor racing, especially single-seat open-wheel stuff, what's called a formula car is called single-seat open-wheel. That's a European sport, right?
Yeah.
So every country in Europe or every town everywhere has a motorsports rider. Well, in sports in the U.S., it's bat and ball. It's football, basketball, baseball, then hockey a little bit, and then soccer and so on. So there was really no way to learn, and no mentors anywhere to be found. So I decided that I was, going to do it on my own. And I with an old friend, I built a homemade trailer, and bought a single-seat open-wheel Formula Ford, which is like the lower series starter road racing car. And it had a 4-cylinder Cortina English Ford motor in it, and I got my engine manual at Ulrich's bookstore in downtown Ann Arbor, And the guys at Chelsea Milling Company in those days built me a 12 by 20 foot plywood garage, and that's where I started. I had no more idea than a rabbit what I was doing.
I mean, you grew up in the Michigan area, and most people who get into the automotive racing scene, I would assume in those days they would either be more of a NASCAR person or a drag racing person,
or sprint cars or midgets or quarter midgets, that kind of stuff.
What drew you to the open wheel, like the Indian Formula style?
Well, it was the Indianapolis 500, So I mean that's all I knew.
Yeah.
I hadn't been to any other races, and Indy cars are a single seat open wheel car. Of course, their tires are aerodynamic devices, and their engines are significantly bigger than like the smaller series, the starter series, Formula Fords, and so on. So, it's like anything else. There are sort of smaller classes, and then you work your way up, and so on. I might as well spill the beans now that, unlike every other sport, the driver, whether it's NASCAR, drag racing, Formula One, IndyCar, whatever, the driver's contribution is only 30%.
Wow.
The car itself, to include the engine, the tires, the way it's set up, and so on, that's 60% of the deal. 30% is driver's ability, and then there's 10%. I think you make your own good luck or your bad luck.
Yeah.
So that's a difficult thing to express to people. It's not difficult because it's the facts, but I think a lot of people are conditioned to think in sports it's the human that can make the difference.
Yeah.
In most cases it is, but not in racing.
So what for the people out there who have never been to the Indianapolis 500 or the Brickyard or whatever, what's so special about that race? Why are people drawn to that? What's different about that race than any other kind of race?
Well, I think the notoriety, the payout, the number of spectators. I think that the Holman family, who purchased the and built the Speedway, did a heck of a job as stewards, right? And right from the beginning, the whole idea was to develop things for the automobile industry, whether it's tires or it whatever, anything that goes on an automobile, brakes. I mean, the rear view mirror was something that was introduced at Indianapolis 500. I think it was 1917, something like that. So, racetrack, the Holman family attracted engine manufacturers and chassis manufacturers and so on. And by far and away, in terms of spectators, it is light years behind anything else. Midwest, as I said earlier, the rah stuff. You know what I mean? That's the heart of America, right?
Yeah.
So
I bet the competition there is pretty steep too, racing at the Indy 500.
It is, and I was lucky enough to I competed or drove there 6 times, and I was lucky enough to be there in the heyday. With the AJ Foyts, the Mario Andretti's, and Al and Bobby Unser and so on. And I'll quickly say today, the people that the drivers and the teams that compete at Indy, they're all good.
Yeah.
But if you're lucky, there may be 34 or 35 cars entered. Back in the day, in my day anyway, there was well over 100 entries.
Wow.
So, and there's only 33 that start the race. So there's almost like 2 races. The first is you've got to qualify. So in other words, 60 or 70 people don't make it, and 33 starters.
So you raced 6 times at the Indianapolis 500 alone?
I did.
And you got to race against Mario Andretti and all these legendary racers?
Absolutely. Gordy Johncock and Rick Mears and all the names that I would say my generation, which is like ancient, names that most people would recognize.
Yeah, absolutely.
And most people recognize those names due to the notoriety of the Indy 500.
Of all those drivers that you competed against, who was your favorite driver, or who was you most awestruck by meeting for the first time or racing against for the first time?
Well, I'll tell you a cute story. I'll have to little backstory that I'm the eldest of 5 kids, and so when we would go to the Indy 500, we would each pick a name out of a hat, right?
Yeah.
And you hoped you got AJ Foy, or you hope you got Gordy Johncock, or you hope you got Al Unser or Bobby Unser or these guys. And so I'd have to say that AJ Foy was probably the best known name to me. And so when my first day at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and I was entered as a driver, and the first day I walked into that place, into the old garages where they're the wooden ones, now they're fancy and stuff like that, I see AJ Foy walking towards me with his mechanic Jack Starnes. Now, I hadn't met him.
Yeah.
Okay? But you got to understand that racing's all about anticipation, okay? And anticipation and aggressiveness and so on. So AJ's walking towards me, I'm walking towards him, and I extend my hand, to introduce myself, but I waited until he was on the ball of his foot, so I pulled him towards me a little bit off balance. Now, I mean, anybody out there would say, what the hell's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Well, probably a lot of things, but look, I'm going to meet this guy. He doesn't know me from a hole in the wall. I've known about him forever, and I didn't want him to think that, I was, a pushover sort of guy.
Yeah.
And so caught him off balance a little bit, and he immediately figured out what I was doing.
Yeah.
And he appreciated it.
Yeah.
Well, then his mechanic, Jack, after he could see this interchange between AJ and I, said, yeah, Holmes, when you get done driving, why don't you could ride our horses, because AJ had horses that would enter and I'm a little guy, and most of the drivers are small. I will tell you that there are 3 reasons, Gary.
Yeah.
And David, why the best drivers are short. First reason is there's a definite relationship between horsepower and weight.
Yeah.
Right? Second reason is when you're small, you take up less space. So the designers like you a lot because they can put more weight towards the center of gravity. And third reason, and probably most important, is when you're short, it takes less time for the impulse to go from the brain to the foot.
I like that. I knew about the first 2, but the third one I never put together. It's funny because if you think about it, like, horse racing and auto racing, the guys are always smaller.
Yeah.
Like jockeys or,
Right.
or open wheel guys. I mean, NASCAR is a little bit different because those are the southern corn-fed guys, at least back in the day, the ex-moonshiners.
Well, there's a lot more space, in a stock car, even though their seats are custom, nowadays or last 25 years or so. But there's a lot more room in a stock car for, guys like Buddy Baker was no midget.
Yeah, exactly. Not only you raced at the Brickyard for the Indy 500, you raced it 6 times. Weren't you the 1979 Rookie of the Year for the Indy 500 as well?
I was, yeah. And so, in no particular order, I had a 6th, a 7th, 2 tenths, 12th, and a 13th. So my average finishing was 9.999, and as it turns out, I had the best average finishing rate of anybody from 1911 through 1995 or so.
Yeah.
Now I don't anymore. So yeah, I was Rookie of the Year in '79. I was on the front row in '84.
Wow.
With Rick Mears and Tom Sneva. I didn't win it. Would have loved to win it, but I don't consider the fact that I didn't win it. It wasn't a great career. I mean, I had a great career. I was 1978 Formula Atlantic champion, and my career path was towards Formula One, really. But frankly, because of my age, I didn't start racing till I was 21. And, most people in racing, they start go-karts as kids, young, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you look at Formula One these days, or even IndyCar, there are early 20-something guys that are at the pinnacle of racing because they've been doing it all their life.
Yes.
So it was. I realized that was going to be, a mark against me. So much so that when I filled out the application for racing license, I was born in 1947. I let's just say my hand slipped a little bit when I was riding the 7, and I just happened to extend the top part of the 7.
Looked a little more like a 9.
It looked a whole lot more like a 9. Yeah.
So most Americans don't know this. What is the big difference between, let's say, Formula One racing or a Formula One car versus Indy style racing or an Indy car?
Well, they both classify as what we call Formula, single seat open wheel car. The difference is between the two. Indy cars actually will go faster, because they race on ovals as well. IndyCar will top out at about 240 miles an hour, whereas a Formula One car, which only races on road courses, at best they might get 205, 207, something like that. And there are very few tracks that they compete on where there's a straight long enough to do that. The biggest difference between the two cars really is centers around the specifications and the rules. Formula One's technology is, I'm going to say, light years greater than the IndyCar series. Now, when I say that, that doesn't mean that IndyCar isn't technologically advanced. Yes. The difference is, what's allowed in the rule books.
Yeah.
Formula One, every team builds their own cars, and it is the pinnacle, I would say, certainly of road racing, and but to complement IndyCar racing, IndyCars race on ovals and street circuits, so there's a significantly more compromise with what the car has to do. Competing on ovals, it's easy to say, well, you're just turning left. I always thought that Formula One was the most difficult thing, road racing, biggest skill. Truth to me is oval racing is more difficult.
Yeah.
And the reason is, once you get going, your speed doesn't vary much. You're not braking for corners, and you're not turning left. You're not going uphill and downhill, and you don't race in the rain. So what I'm trying to say, Gary, is that band of concentration is extremely narrow on an oval a track, which surprised me.
And holding that line for hours, and
right.
I mean, all you need is a second of let your mind wander, and you're done.
Well, I tell you another secret about race car drivers, and not just the drivers, but the engineers and aerodynamicists and the mechanics and everybody else. We're all information junkies.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, look, there are so many variables on a car that you can adjust, and aerodynamics and wind, and whether there's a cloud in the sky, all these things. I mean, really,
yeah.
it makes a difference on the temperature of the track and just these gazillion things. And if you start thinking about driving, a place like Indianapolis Motor Speedway, well, you're going 240 miles an hour down a straightaway. Oh, by the way, there's 32 other cars around, and some of them might be next to you or in front of you or behind you. What are they going to do? What are you going to do? And it's a information junkie's business decision. What I mean by that is you look at your options, in this case, where do you turn into the corner? And that varies whether there's nobody in front of you or there are two people in front of you. You know, how you're going to take that corner, how you exit that corner, and then after you implement that decision, then you do an analysis whether that was a good decision or a bad decision.
Yeah.
And this stuff's going on all the time. So it is much more mental than people think. I will say that physically it's demanding as well because you're wearing, fireproof underwear, fireproof driver's suit. You're sitting in a confined area. Usually the temperature outside is, 70, 80, 90, and there's no time that you don't lose 3, 4, 5 pounds. Now, if you weigh 160, 3 or 4 pounds is one percentage. If you're 130, then that's a bigger difference. So, it's a sport that really isn't understood very well, and that's okay. The fact is, it's entertainment, right? People have disposable income that they're going to spend on something, whether they're going to go to a movie, whether they're going to go to a play, whether they're going to go to a ball game, whatever. There's X amount of dollars goes towards entertainment. Well, racing is a form of entertainment.
Yeah. So the first time you raced at the Indy 500 was 1979. Do you remember
everything?
What was going through your head sitting in that car before the race? Obviously, you were probably nervous and excited. What's going through your mind right before your very first Indy 500?
Well, one of the things that drivers need to sort of hone and understand is that you have to be able to segment your, first of all, you have to be able to separate your thoughts from your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
There is no place for emotion in racing. Emotions will kill you.
Kill you, yeah.
Right. So you have to be able to compartmentalize your thinking. So to answer your question, Gary, the whole first race in 1979 was sort of a whiz-bang deal from the beginning. I got a call in February. I won the Atlantic Racing Series, North American Series in 78. I couldn't find anything in Formula One, so I went back to Form Atlantic. And in February, out of the blue, this guy calls me. And he said, are you Howdy Holmes? I said, yeah. He said, how'd you like to drive in the Indy 500? I mean, just like cold calls today, right? And I thought, well, come on. Some guy's messing with me.
Yeah.
So I said, hesitated for a second. I said, no, thanks. I'm playing paddleball that weekend. And the guy didn't know what to say. And his name was Anto Roberts, and he was representing Texaco, and he go, no, I really mean it, and stuff like that. So what I'm trying to say is, if I knew, or anybody knew, that they were going to drive in the Indy 500, let's say in August, and the following May, there's plenty of time to mess your head up.
Right? Oh, yeah.
To your point, 400,000 people, blah, 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 blah. I didn't have that luxury, which is a plus. And the car owner was from Sprint Car Racing, and Sherman Armstrong was his name. His hope was they had won everything in Sprint Car Racing because they had the best mechanic. His name was Paul Leffler. And so Sherman wanted new grounds to conquer, and he wanted to butt heads with the Roger Penske's and so on. So the whole idea was kind of a hope. Hey, here's a new car owner. They had a 3-year-old chassis at the time. It was a Wildcat, which are chassis that were made by Pat Patrick from Jackson, Michigan. He's no longer in racing, no longer with us. It had an Offenhauser engine. The quick cars were had Cosworths. So everything was dated. But it turns out that was a plus. And the reason is because there were lots of Wildcat chassis when they were popular. There were lots of Offenhauser engines when they were popular. And what that means is there was a lot of knowledge about the cars and a lot of knowledge about the engines with the mechanics and the engineers and so on. And, it is who does the better job that makes the difference. As I said, the car is the most important thing. So we qualified 13th, which is pretty darn good. There were 108 entries that year, and we made the race, qualified 13. On the second lap, I had to make a pit stop because the turbocharger wasn't working. Well, there's a 4-inch hose that goes from the turbocharger to the plenum chamber, and I pulled in, and it turns out that there was a hose clamp that was loose, so the pressure was going out in the air. They just tightened up the hose clamp, and so I missed two laps in the pits, entered on lap 4, and in last place, and finished 7th. And the car just ran all day.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that one of the coolest things was coming out of turn 4. I can't remember what lap it was, but I passed AJ Foy. And, that was the one moment I allowed myself to kind of be present, as opposed to attending to the decisions that I needed to make. And I remember I kind of waved to him, like, see ya.
Yeah, I mean that's huge.
Cool.
That's huge. That's you got to admit though that you run that first lap or two, and then you got to come in the pit. You almost scream like, "What the?" It's
right.
like you go from this high
right.
to, "Oh no, we're out of it," or "We're not gonna,"
Right. Well, I had I guess drivers are kind of guilty of never giving up. What I didn't say is when I was, and in those days at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, there were 400,000 people there for qualifying.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Another 400,000, a lot of them might have been the same people for the race. And I remember walking out of the garage area to go to the pits. The cars are lined up on the track and things like that. And I walked out there, and I just allowed myself one look at the grandstands, and all stuff started to flood into my sitting there as a young guy, and I shut it off immediately. Yeah. I couldn't. I knew enough to know that, look, that's not, your mind doesn't need to go there.
Yeah.
You got other things to think about.
No, I mean, and like I consider race car drivers athletes, and like to be a good athlete, you have to be able to kind of stay in the moment and do what you've done 100 times before. And another thing that's always good to remember is, they paid to watch the race or watch you, I mean,
right.
and like, you have to shut that down and give them what they paid for too. And it's a lot harder than it sounds.
Well, yeah, you never think of the fans, when you're driving. I said, you're going so fast. There's so many things going on. Any lapse of memory can hurt big time, especially on ovals. You can't drop a wheel off into the dirt on an oval track because there's concrete walls everywhere, and they hurt. I hit a few, and not at Indy, but at other places, and so on. And really, you're going so fast. People don't understand that speed is relative. So the best example I like to think of is, when you're the youngest guy around here, so you might be able to remember the first time you got on the highway with your driver's license and you went 70 miles an hour. Seemed like you were going a gazillion, right? Until you got adjusted to it. And what I'm trying to say is, no matter how fast you're going, you just move your vision farther down the road. So that's what I mean by speed is relative. And but you're going well longer than a football field a second. So stuff happens pretty fast.
So, I mean, I'm talking to a guy who's been over 200 miles an hour multiple times. I mean, do you miss it? Do you miss going that fast? I'm not talking about racing or the lifestyle or anything like that, but the ability to drive 200 plus miles an hour.
So what I miss and what I catch myself doing from time to time is my mind will speed up. So, I mean, I worked really hard at my craft, as all professional athletes do, whatever it is, looking for another 0.5%, another in racing, another 1/10 of a second, and so on. So my mind will race. Even now in my job at Chelsea Milling Company, which is 180 degrees different than racing. I mean, because family business is all about emotion. Racing doesn't allow emotion. And this is maybe for another time, Gary, but, you know, my challenge when I came back to the company, which I always intended to do, and I, in the beginning, never thought that I was going to be a race car driver, even though I wanted to be a race car driver. I just didn't have the opportunity until it presented itself. And so from time to time, I catch myself in a conversation with somebody about, and I like to do strategic things. Yeah. I'm good at strategic thinking, project what's happening next week, 3 years from now, and so on. And immediately my mind's going through the checklist of all the things that happen.
Going back to your racing days.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I go, whoa.
But maybe that's why you're so good at business, though. Maybe that's why you were wired to be a race car driver, and later why you were so successul in business. I mean, there has to be a connection between the two.
I think there is a connection, and that connection is something that none of us control. I think decisions are made for all of us that we don't really understand.
Yeah.
You know, nobody likes change because we want to know what the results are before we start. So I do think that the racing business, because it's all about mechanics and performance and so on, I couldn't have had a better training ground to be, you know, the president and CEO of Chelsea Milling Company, because we're a manufacturer.
Yeah.
We've got machines everywhere. So, you know, the efficiency, preventative maintenance, and so on, they're like sisters, these two businesses. The difference is, you know, one is all about emotion, the family business, and racing doesn't allow that. Who transitioned from one to the other, and I had a 5-year exit plan. Because to your comment earlier, do I miss it? If you're doing something you love to do, you're always going to miss it.
Yeah.
So I had to figure out how I could leave with no unfinished business. And that meant that I need to figure out the difference between my heart and my head. And that's kind of where that, you know, saying when we were talking about family business, where that came from. Because over the years, I saw a lot of people that were drivers that, you know, for one reason or another, that kept hanging on and hanging on and hanging on. As I said earlier, it's a passionate thing, but, you know, if it doesn't work for you, if something's not going to work for you, you got to accept it and move on. Try and find something else.
You were talking about business. You brought up the Chelsea Milling Co. Since I live in the area, I know what that is, and you know it's a big business, employs a lot of people, does a lot of good things in our community. But the average person out there in North America, they may not notice the name Chelsea Milling Company. They know it by another name.
They do. That brand name is Jiffy, Jiffy.
So Jiffy is owned by the Chelsea Milling. That's a product that you guys
Jiffy
produce.
is a brand of Chelsea Milling Company.
Okay.
And
has been for a long time?
Well, actually, the story is that my grandmother, Mabel, invented the first ever mix product. Now, you know, we're used to mixes, right? But back in the day when people baked, they would have a sack of flour, some soda, a little salt, pinch of this, spoonful of that. That's what baking required. And she came up with the idea, wouldn't it be nice to invent a product that was save people time in the kitchen and be so easy, even a man could do it. Now, there's a story
Maybe
behind
a better recipe, too.
well, if you think about it, how much time it takes to do things by hand, and then a mix is a lot of those things are already blended, and you just add maybe a little bit of oil or a little, or liquid, and bake it. So she started an industry, and the name of our first product was Jiffy. And the reason that she named it Jiffy is that when she was a young girl living in Chelsea, and her father Chelsea's not a big place.
Yep.
It was even smaller back in the 20s. When her father would come home for lunch like everybody else, the gal whose name was Ula, who worked in the then, her maiden name is White, household, would say to my grandmother, Mabel, you run and tell your father these biscuits will be ready in a jiffy. Well, so she remembered this story.
Wow.
That's how the brand became known. And as I said, here we are, the number one selling dry grocery item in the United States. I can't help but pass on why I think that is. Our qualities, I'm not objective, but let's just say our qualities as good as anything else out there. I honestly think it's better, but let's just say it's as good. But the big difference is we don't do any advertising.
Yeah. You never see a commercial or anything.
Any of that kind of stuff. So we can pass those savings. What people don't realize is what couponing or TV or any sort of advertising or merchandising, a significant portion of those costs are added to the to the product or to the service. Yeah. And so by not doing that, that means that we can save the consumer a significant amount of money. So, we started in 1930. In April 1930, Jiffy, the first mix was introduced. And so, it was, our notoriety was word of mouth, which is the best form of advertising there is.
Amen.
If David tells you, Gary, something about, I don't know, a type of T-shirt or something like that, you're going to listen to it and look into it, right?
Yeah.
Because him and you respect his. Yeah.
Not from David, but if somebody like you told me. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. David, you might question it, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, well, all right. We'll leave that one alone. Yeah. So that's how we're different. That's why I think people appreciate it. Because the truth is, the majority of people are working collar people.
Yes.
And we believe that they deserve the highest quality product at the best price. And when you have both of those things, that's a value.
People recognize that blue and white box, man. I'll tell you what. That's like as iconic or Americana as Coca-Cola or, McDonald's or whatever. And
Never heard of those two.
Yeah. And, you guys make a lot of those boxes, those little boxes. They're like $1, maybe less or whatever. How many of those things do you make in a day? Roughly.
Oh, yikes. 150,000 an hour. So $1.5 million.
So you make over
$1.8 million
over $1.5 million of those little boxes every day.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's at our printing stuff. And then we, there's a liner, and you put Jiffy Mix in there. So finished product, we do 1.6 million.
You guys make
boxes.
That stuff all out of country, like in China, and ship it over, or where's that stuff made? You don't export?
No, and the reason is because the export business, the way that works is a company, the product or a service will identify, some country somewhere. And it used to be that the logistical aspect was the hang up, the nightmare. But nowadays what happens is a company will contract with somebody in that country to eliminate the logistic cost. Trouble is, I don't trust anybody.
Yeah.
And
I don't blame you.
All we have is, is our formulas and things like that. You can find our products in 35 countries as it is. How that happens is if a wholesaler in the United States buys our product and decides to sell it overseas, or we can't do anything about it.
Yeah, that's up to them.
So it's good news, bad news. Good news is, it's exposure. The bad news is it's probably not priced the way we want it to. Yeah. And if you think of stuff that's shipped in containers and crosses the ocean and goes to Zimbabwe and sits on a dock for 10 days in 105-degree temperature, you're going to find some little critters in there. Yeah. Like I say, in a lot of places, that's no big deal.
Yeah, that's normal. So you're making the stuff in Michigan? Good old Michigan? Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome. The Midwest. Love
Absolutely.
That.
Yeah.
So do you ever get Jiffy to sponsor any of your cars?
I did a couple of times, or over the years, several times, and sometimes not. It made a big difference to me. I'm sort of, extremely proud of the brand, and really our family heritage is we're in the flour milling business. We have a flour mill at Chelsea, and we've been in Chelsea since about 1864. But my great-great-great-grandfather, and then one more great before that, were also in the flour milling business in Scioto Township. There was one in Dexter. I mean, back in the day, people don't know this. There were flour mills everywhere, because when a town sort of starts to exist, they need two things. They need to eat, so always with a flour mill or a corn mill or grist mill back in the days. And the other thing is that they would be a wood mill, so they got to build things. So people don't realize that for a long, long time there were flour mills everywhere.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Chelsea and Dexter are two small communities outside of Ann Arbor, Ann Arbor is roughly an hour or less from the city of Detroit here in Michigan. And Ann Arbor is where the University of Michigan is. It's been consistently rated one of the top places to live in America, on and off, depending on whose stat that you're reading for the last 20 years. And for us locals, we would rather live in Dexter and Chelsea because they're, just outside of the quote-unquote big city, and they're a little bit more country and peaceful and a little bit more laid back.
I'd say a little bit differently. I love Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
And it's 16 square miles surrounded by reality.
Yeah. I love that. I work in Ann Arbor. People go, "Do you like Ann Arbor?" And I go, "I do like Ann Arbor." And I said, "It's a great place to visit, but I wouldn't want to live there." Yeah, and no disrespect to Ann Arbor, people who like it's not for me.
I enjoy living there.
Yeah,
it's a great place to raise children because of the diversity.
Yeah,
two great hospital systems,
school districts,
university,
everything, restaurants,
the research and development centers and things like it is. It is a special place, and because of its intellectual nature, it kind of attracts intellectual people.
Yes.
And sometimes they might have one blue sock and one black sock, and they might wear a striped with a checked, and and I'm being tongue in cheek, whoever listens to this, because I said I love the place, but please make a decision, Ann Arbor, please.
What the best thing is, people talk about like the food in Ann Arbor, like the Real Seafood Company, or this is my favorite restaurant. My two favorite restaurants in Ann Arbor, and I don't know, you've lived there a long time, is I like Izzy's on Stadium, and the owner, there's a new owner. The original guy just recently died, unfortunately, and he was a younger guy when he'd passed. But then I'm a sucker for Blimpy Burger still, and that's the place.
Wow.
And I'm not talking about the chain Blimpy Burger. So if you're not from the Ann Arbor area, it's not, we have a Blimpy Burger. That's like a McDonald's. No. This is Crazy Jim's Blimpy Burger. There's only one, and it's in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
So, and they're downtown Ann Arbor now, next to a tattoo place, and then next to Fleetwood Diner, which is another great one.
Yep.
But their original location was kitty corner to Perry School, which I went to in third grade, and I would have to climb the fence in the parking lot to go over and to Blimpy Burgers. And, if your lunch cost $1.50, well, what lunch costs $1.50 anymore? Yeah. If it costs $10 and you or $6 and you gave them a 10, there's a good chance you could get a $2 bill too. Remember that?
Yeah. I remember the old location, not the original, but the one where they tore it down to do the housing and stuff.
Yeah, that was the original place.
Yeah, I think there was one before that, though.
Really?
Yeah, because then the one that I was talking about is like on Packard, right where it split there.
Yeah, no, that's the original one.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's what I remember as the original. Someone told me, and maybe they were pulling my leg, that there was one other location before that, like when they originally opened.
No.
But then I remember when I would walk in there, they would still be rude to you. And that was their thing. And
yeah, Ruby.
Yeah, and then they would say stuff like, "You want anything from the fryer?" What?
Yeah.
You want anything from the fryer? And you're like, is that even English? And then what they were saying to you is, do you want anything from the fryer? Meaning, do you want onion rings? Do you want French fries? And I'm like, I don't know what the heck.
And in the
saying.
beginning, the person that would say that the most was Ruby.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you didn't give her any lip.
No.
Period.
No. You weren't.
Or you were out the door.
And you never talked on your cell phone in line either.
They didn't have cell phones back in those days.
Yeah, that was the big thing, is they wouldn't wait on you. And the sign that I liked the best in there, they said, if you need like something diet or try something off of our diet menu, we have water. That was a great
And
great
Crazy
place.
Jim, he was a special guy.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is the original owner was Jim, and then he sold it to a guy named Jim. What the heck? What's the chances of that?
Well, brand loyalty, right? Yeah.
So I did want to talk about, we talked about your first race at Indy. I want to talk about your last race. What year was it in? Where was it at? Do you remember that one?
I do.
Kind of like your last girlfriend before you get married or something, right? Or
let's
no?
not go there.
No? Okay.
No.
So your last race was where?
The last race was in Miami, Indy Cars, in 1988.
Okay.
I think it was September. And but I got hurt pretty bad in about halfway through the 85 season.
In a crash?
In a crash, yeah. We were the series was at a place called Laguna Seca, which is a road course in Monterey, California. And there's a real famous corner called the Corkscrew, which is a hard left and a hard right, and you drop down this hill. Just as I dropped down, a left front wheel fell off the car, and the car took a hard right and flipped over and in a ditch, which they had freshly put some sand in there. And so,
what kind of speeds were you going roughly when that happened?
Right. That was only like 75 miles an hour at that. But when you're upside down, I've been upside down at 180 as well, but that's a different story.
180 upside down? Wow.
Yeah, flipping end over end 8 times at a place called Ontario Motor Speedway. But anyway, so I got hurt pretty bad, and so I was out for a year and a half. And when I look back at it, Gary, it was probably meant to be, in the sense that I had already started a 5-year exit plan. I started in 1983 to leave in 88. 85, halfway through, I get hurt, and I was not cleared to drive until 87. And so at that point in time, I came back to Chelsea Milling Company in November of 87, and I got an offer to race in 88. And it was from it wasn't from a top team, and I pursued the offer. It was a horrible season. The car was uncompetitive, and I hated it, which is a great way to leave.
Yeah,
because I mean, I certainly had completed the unfinished business of separating my heart from my head, but I really didn't at all like the 88 season.
Did guys make money back then? Like, I mean, guys like you, did you make any money being a racer, or enough to live on, or a lot?
Yeah, depending on who you drove for, what the situation was, who the sponsor was. You know, drivers usually get a salary and a percentage of the winnings. That particular year was limited salary and 40%, I believe it was of the winnings. But when you're when you're not finishing in the top 10, stuff like that, 40% of zip is zip.
What's the most you ever made from one race? Like, did you ever figure out like, hey, I made 10 grand from this race, or I made whatever? We got to realize that, even $1,000 back in the 70s or 80s is worth a lot more than it is in 2024.
I can tell you, due to my finishes experience at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, because it paid really well.
Yeah.
When I retired from racing in 1988, I read that there was a list of the all-time money makers. I was 28th in the world.
Wow.
In 1988. And the winnings were a little less than $2.5 million.
Wow. Okay. I had no idea that they were making that kind of money back then. I mean, I know like NASCAR drivers and IndyCar drivers today make big money, but yeah. I really did not know that you guys did that well back then.
And I frankly, when I saw that in National Speed Sport News, was, shocked a little bit. Yikes. Was my reaction. And at the same time, then went, yeah, hey, that was a good career.
Yeah. So this might be a great opportunity to tell you, Dave and I are starting a racing team, and we're looking for a sponsor. And, we I'm just
Have you thought of calling Pennzoil?
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't realize you guys did so well.
Well, the thing about Jiffy and sponsorship was I'm old-fashioned guy, really.
Yes.
And very proud of the family business. And so I'm, not so bad at business either.
Yeah.
And so, sponsoring a race car that doesn't have TV coverage is not a
doesn't make sense.
Good investment.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
So I knew that, Jiffy could benefit from it. In fact, during those years, about 6 years at Indy, and it wasn't always Jiffy, by the way. I think 3 of those 6, or maybe it was 4 of those 6. A couple times, Jiffy was an associate sponsor as well. The increase in sales was about 30%.
Really?
Yeah. And that's a big deal.
Yeah, that's huge.
It's a big deal anytime. So, in other words, it was a good investment. And I, of course, as a family member, very proud of what we do and the name and so on.
You ever deal with Tom Monahan and Dominos Pizza or anything like that, like back in the day through racing or business?
Well, Domino's Pizza was the sponsor when I drove for Doug Shearson in 82 and 83. And yes, I know Tom Monahan very well. Saw him a couple days ago. And
really?
Oh, yeah.
Is he still down in Florida or no? Or?
He's in Florida. He's got he's got the law school down there. He's got the church down there, Ave Maria, and he's back and forth.
Good. For people that don't know, Domino's Pizza is, their world headquarters is, in our area, and Tom and his brother started Domino's Pizza right here in the Ypsilanti area. Yeah. And I mean, my father remembers him back in the day where they were starting out, back when it was him and his brother still. And, when they started out, they didn't have any money. And a lot of times they'd say, hey, we can give you cash, or, for towing one of their trucks, they said, or we can give you this pizza.
Right.
And if you know my dad and, how he likes to eat, would he rather have, back in the day at $10, or would he rather have $20 of the pizza? He's going to take the $20 of pizza. And so that's how they used to pay us.
Well, Tom and his brother, I mean, they did a heck of a job. And, that's another kind of wonderful story of starting a business and becoming famous. And Tom's a humble guy. It was it's challenging for an individual to when their world kind of changes to something they're not familiar with.
Yeah.
And what I'm referring to in this particular sense is this, Domino's is a worldwide name at this point in time. And so, rapid growth is difficult.
Yeah.
And I think because in the early days, my father, you talked about your dad, my father was on the board of directors. When it came to Doug Shearson approached Domino's to in a proposal to sponsor IndyCar. My father was not allowed to vote, by the way, just so people. But Tom is a humble guy now. He's kind of seen it all.
Yeah.
And has really strong principles and values, and I respect him immensely.
So, I always liked drag racing and NASCAR, more than Indy growing up as a young kid or whatever. And then but the Indianapolis 500 was always something special to me because my great grandfather raced at the Brickyard, and he was a mechanic for a very famous. He was well before your time, but Wilbur Shaw. He won it in 1937.
He won it 3 times.
Yep, he won it in 1939 and 1940. It might be, don't hate me, I might be off a little bit, but I'm close. But he won it 3 times, and he was a mechanic, and he actually raced against Wilbur Shaw. Is at my uncle's. They had an office in the backside of their shop. They had these blown up pictures, and it was basically my great grandfather, coming around some dirt track. I don't think that was Indy, and then he's in front of Wilbur Shaw.
Nice.
And so that was his claim to fame or whatever.
Yeah, and that's a big claim to fame because Wilbur Shaw, if I'm not mistaken, he might have been the first 3-time winner.
Yeah, I think he was first or second 2-time and first or second 3-time winner, but there wasn't that many of them. The joke was, though, when he was in front of Wilbur Shaw, we don't know if he's a lap down, though.
Yes, good point. Good point. Good point.
I always thought it was cool because they would point it out or whatever, and but most Americans they don't know what happened the generation before them. That's why I like doing stuff like this. Is I know you're a humble guy, but I mean, I'm a car guy. Everybody knows who you are. You're very well respected, not just in this community, but in the automotive community and the racing community. And when we decided to do this, and I'm not trying to put any shade on anybody's name, but everyone goes, why don't you go after a Chip Foose or something like that? And Chip is a great guy. I love Chip Foose. And I said, we don't need to interview Chip Foose. There's 100 interviews with Chip Foose. You can search YouTube right now and find anything you want to know about Chip Foose. I said, who I want to go after is who I think are automotive legends, who guys in the industry think are automotive legends that a lot of this generation does not know.
Yeah.
And when I made the list, believe it or not, the first 10 or 15 names I spit off on the top of my head, you were on the list. And a lot of people, when they read my list, they go, who is that? And I go, and I said, exactly.
They were thinking Howdy Doody.
No, not just to your name, but to the top 15. They go, this is your top 15? Who is that? And I said, exactly.
Yeah.
I said, these guys played a huge role in the automotive industry. And just because, and I hate to say it, Americans are stupid and you don't know who these people are, Well, is that too harsh? I'm sorry.
No. It's not harsh. I will say, it's my belief and my experience in racing, because there's the open wheel guys, and then there's stock car folks, and there's sprint cars, and there's drag racing, and so every one of them is really a small group of people.
Yes.
Or fraternity, if you will. And you don't know, if you're a drag racer, you don't know much about IndyCar racing or Formula One racing or stock car racing. And I found that to be the case. The thing about racing, like a lot of other sports, people are very loyal.
Well, your generation was very loyal. It's starting to get less and less as time goes on.
Well,
that's
because we're all disappearing. Yeah, that's another story. Holy smokes!
I just mean that your generation was, when a man gave you his word and said he was going to do something, looked you in the eye and shook his hand. I mean, 9 times out of 10, you knew that was going to happen. Now,
yeah, it meant something in those days.
Yeah, now it doesn't mean anything.
I still, as I'm sure you do, and we don't know about Dave, do we? But the
cool thing about Dave, he's not technically an American, so he's very old school himself. So,
okay, well, hello. I don't know. I think that things like integrity and principles and character, those things are critical, and I hate to see them eroding, quite frankly, because it is that sort of enthusiasm and that dedication and that determination that made this country what it is.
Absolutely.
And I think because most of us or a lot of us are spoiled brats, we don't understand how we got here and think everything should be just given to you. That's in jeopardy. I also believe that that's never going to win the day. At the end, when it comes to, we're going to remember who we are, and we're going to have to fight for it. I'll say that too, which sounds a little alarming, but hey, there was this interesting thing called a civil war that that the very same thing we're talking about. Yeah. That's why there was a civil war.
Yeah.
I hope there isn't one, but it's looking scary.
Hope 2.0 doesn't happen.
Well, the weapons are a little different these days.
Yeah.
Muskets and knives.
Yeah. Slingshots
and, boulders back in the day. I think people are guilty of sort of taking advantage of things until it reach a point where, not that it's unclaimable, well, reach a point where, enough is enough. And I think we're pretty close to that.
I do too, unfortunately. I apologize about the cat every time we shoot down here. So she won't come down here until we get a couple people, and then she wants to wander.
She's an all-star.
Yeah, and the funny thing is she doesn't really want anything to do with people until the cameras are rolling. She wants to crawl around and knock at our stuff.
Like I said, she's an all-star.
I missed the question. So what we do here, and I should have warned you about this, but you said you weren't a car guy, so I avoided this question. But the first question that I always ask everybody when they come on is your very first car. What was the year, make, and model of it, and what happened to it?
First of all, it wasn't mine. It was my parents, and it was a my God, a gray convertible. It was a Pontiac Catalina.
Ooh,
and but hell with that one. Let me tell you about my favorite car.
Okay,
it was a 1965 GTO. And my brother and I talked my dad into getting a GTO because we were going to get to drive it sometimes. And as it turns out, my father loved driving it. So our nickname it was a deep burgundy. So we used to call it Red Boy. I mean, that was our favorite name for that. And you know what? No, it wasn't a Catalina. First car was a CJ4 Jeep.
Wow.
Yeah, that's it.
Wow.
So as you can tell, I mean, they didn't mean much to me.
Yeah, no.
It got me from point A to point B.
No, and that's fine. What happened to those two cars? I mean, do you guys sell them? Do you wreck them, or don't even remember? It's been so long.
Never wrecked one of my parents' cars. I will tell you that I am guilty of taking my parents' car. One of my parents' cars, because my mom was all over the place. My dad was out to Chelsea every day, and so that meant if they went out at night, there was one car at home.
Yeah.
I think you can sense where I'm going with this. I tell this story with a great deal of caution and glee, so this will be history. But little Stevie Wonder, his first concert was at the Walled Lake Casino.
Wow, really?
Okay, yeah, and I was 15. I did not have a driver's license, and I took their second car. I'm not going to tell you what it was. It wasn't a fancy car. It might have been a station wagon because we had 5 kids. But I took one of their cars to Walled Lake Casino and saw little Stevie Wonder's first concert.
Wow.
And never forget the fact, somebody, he's out there doing fingertips, right, with his harmonica. And when he's done, a handler comes out on the side. I mean, the guy can't see it and stuff, so he
allegedly. No, just kidding.
No, I'm thinking, yeah. Well, that's fair.
Well, no, we'll get into that in a minute. I wanted.
But anyway,
to finish
so
your
the
story.
guy comes, and the fans were going crazy because it was so great. And so there's this famous scene that the handler started to lead him off, and the fans were going crazy, and they wanted more and stuff. So what key? So I did get home in time, and those were the days you used a Rand McNally map as opposed to Waze to find your way from Ann Arbor.
You didn't Google it or GPS it on
There
your phone?
wasn't Google or GPS in those days.
Is this when you guys had phones in your car still?
There were no
There
phones
weren't even
in the
phones
car.
in your car still?
Yeah, right. No. In my day, it was, if you wanted to get in touch with somebody, it was carrier pigeon, right? Yeah.
Be honest with you, I am horrible with directions, and I don't really like technology. I will admit, when the iPhones came out with the maps and stuff, it was a game changer.
Yeah.
For me, like now I can go anywhere, and I'm like, and people go, "How are you gonna get there?" I go, "I don't know. I'm just gonna look it up on my phone." Like,
Yep.
well, here's the best way. I'm like, I don't need to know the best way. I'm gonna look it up on my phone.
That's how I got here.
The reason why I said the allegedly for the Stevie Wonder is there's a former basketball player, Shaquille O'Neal, and he tells this funny story, and I think he's telling it more tongue in cheek, but it's pretty popular on the internet. He tells a story about how he's brought it up over and over and over again that Stevie Wonder is faking being blind.
Oh.
And he said that he was standing in the elevator, and when he came in, he said, "What's up, Big Diesel?" Like he tells that story.
Yeah.
So like when you said like you seen Stevie Wonder's blind, that's why I said allegedly.
Well, my guess is Stevie Wonder was not in the elevator alone, so somebody tipped him off, and that's what Stevie said.
Well, the story with Shaq, he claims that Shaq was in the elevator. Stevie Wonder walks in by himself, and this is Shaq telling it. And I think he's telling it to be funny. And it was the two of them, and Shaq said, "I didn't say a word," and then Stevie went, "What's up, Big Diesel?" and pushed it.
Well, that's a great story. I don't believe it, but it's a great story.
Yeah, I don't know if,
and I don't know Shaq, but he does have a sense of humor.
Yes,
he's hilarious in these commercials and stuff like that. Yeah. Whatever he does, he's funny.
I'm super sarcastic, so a lot of times when I say something, people think that like I'm an idiot or I actually believe what I'm saying. It's just because like growing up in a body shop is you would mess with everybody.
Yeah,
you'd work and you would tease each other, and you just get this level of sarcasm that's so high. You actually sound like an idiot to people who don't know you, as your sarcasm is so high.
I completely ascribe to that way of life.
Yeah.
Understand it thoroughly.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this when we talked earlier. You said, I'm not really a car guy, and I disagree, but whatever. I get it. I get it that so many car guys, you're not living it, breathing it, eating it every day like other people, which is fine. But
right.
I was thinking about this the last couple of days. I was like, man, I wonder what kind of car he owns. Is he into cars? And I was like, man, one of the things I'm going to bring up to him is you could rent one, you could buy one, but the one car that I highly recommend you driving is, and maybe you already have, I'm sorry, is drive a Z06, either a C7 or a C8, or...
Hold on. What manufacturer are you talking about? Chevrolet?
Oh, you were a Ford only guy?
No, hell no.
Okay.
I just want to make sure... I told you I wasn't a car guy. I want to make sure that I thought I knew what you were talking about.
So the new C8 Corvette and the Z06 is like the higher or highest one, depending on the year of it. But the C8 is the mid-engine. So, and then the C7 is where the motor's still in the front. And some people swear that the C8 is the best one ever made, and the handling and the weight. And you know, you with your background, you might be a C8 guy. I'm a C7 guy.
Well, I don't know, but I'll just wait for Chevrolet to call me, and I'll go test whatever they want.
We might be able to make that happen. I know a couple guys up at GM. Take you up to Milford and see if they can.
Well, let's go to Waterford. You know that little track, road racing track?
Yep.
No, in all seriousness, it really didn't make much difference to me when I was responsible for purchasing my own cars.
Yeah.
I mean, I had this old Mercedes-Benz Bach. I can't even tell you the year or the model, but it looked like a big box going down the. And I kept that car for 13 years and stuff like that. I will have to give credit again to my son, because I would, whatever car I had, Gary, I would hold on to it for years.
Yeah.
And the paint would turn colors, you know, so my son, who never, still doesn't understand why I'm not a car guy, and he is a car guy. He said, "Look, you got to get a new car," and he said, "Let me handle it for you." So fine, and because again, what I like is the art of driving.
Yeah.
Okay. And so he put together, this is in 2017, a AMG 63. Love that car.
Yeah.
So it's not flashy, but you wear it, and all the qualities of what I like about driving, you feel the road. You know, not like other German manufacturers who their byline is you feel the road. Yeah, you feel the road with way too stiff chassis. So, and what is this, 24? I'm still driving it.
Yeah.
I love it.
AMG's always made a great vehicle. I mean, that and, like, you know, obviously Porsche, you know, with like the 911 platform or whatever. But
I also have a SUV.
Okay.
Like an idiot, I would drive the 63 in the winter, and that was exciting.
Yeah.
You know, I could get a little.
Yeah.
But the cars these days with all this stuff, you know, I got to drive with my foot.
Yeah.
You know, but you can't sort of slide them a whole lot because of all the, the 4-wheel drive and all this kind of stuff. That's fine. But,
yeah.
And you might ask, how fast do I drive? Well, fortunately, I have to go on 94, which no one goes less than 80 miles an hour.
Yeah.
From Ann Arbor to Chelsea. And I hate the people that are driving like 75 in the left-hand lane. I just blow by them on the right, you know. Try and not. I want to give them an acknowledgement.
I got a buddy who's got a bad to the bone C7 Z06 with a Lindenfelder upgrade to it.
Oh, Ken.
We'll leave it at that.
Ken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so my buddy had Lindenfelder do some upgrades to it. And I just keep thinking, like, you know, with your open wheel, with your IndyCar background and stuff, is I think that may bring you back to it, especially like the C8. Again, I'm a C7 guy for the record. I'm a C7 guy, but I think that mid-engine car, that Z06, might take you back to your roots.
Well, I can do that. I'm not saying no.
Yeah.
For a little test drive, because it brings out the kind of best of me, so to speak. But I used to hate it growing up. After I got in racing, and I was going someplace with somebody, and they said their drive, you scare the crap out of me, because everybody would try and impress me with their driving skills.
I don't drive with other people,
and it scares. So and the other thing is that these are public roads.
Yes,
and it's Michigan, and the roads suck. Sorry,
yeah, they do,
but they're horrible. So if you have a nice car and there's potholes and crumbling asphalt and stuff like that, it's a sin almost.
Yeah. Well, maybe I should say this, is if anybody out there is watching, obviously we're in the Michigan area. There's a lot of courses and tracks around here. If anybody's got a C7 or C8, Z06, maybe this coming spring or summer, you can contact us through the comments down below. Maybe we can meet up and we can have Mr. Holmes drive your. We want a Z06, and we'd love to do a C7 and a C8 on the same day because the cars are different beasts.
Yeah.
I mean, they're both Corvettes, but we'd love to see how they balance. So if you have a hookup for us, comment down below.
Wow.
But I would love.
I'll look forward to it.
I would love to see in that. I know a couple guys up at GM. A couple of my friends just retired or whatever. I know some friends up at the Milford track.
Milford,
But unfortunately nowadays everything with legal, it's so hard to get anybody out there anymore.
Well, there's this place being built in Howell, not too far from here, where it's another one of these private things like thermal.
Yeah.
And so you never know. But I'll answer the phone, so let's see what happens.
Well, hey, we appreciate your time today, and we know you're a busy man, and I love talking about cars and your racing heritage, and I appreciate you coming on and talking to us today.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And you guys go check out Mr. Holmes, and check out Jiffy Mix, and check out his awesome career, and he's just a Google search away. But from David and Gary and everybody at Refinished Media, thanks so much, and to the next one. Wow, you made it to the end of the video. Thank you so much. If you like what we're doing here, go ahead and click a like. You can follow us. In the future, we're going to release more videos, all on automotive content, so look for us in the future. Thanks for watching.